Because I've had so much fun creating my first list of divisive roller coasters, let's turn up the heat, because we're sticking to the roller coasters in Florida. Over the past decade, the Everglades state has really been stepping up their thrill game. Ohio is usually considered the coaster capital of the United States, but with these latest additions at Busch Gardens Tampa, SeaWorld Orlando, Disney World, and Universal Studios, Florida arguably has the best coaster collection in the world. Well, in this video, I'm not talking about the best, well, maybe to some anyways. These are the divisive coasters, or in other words, roller coasters that are extremely polarizing in popularity. Some will swear by these creations, while others would rather watch paint dry than ride that roller coaster again. Before we get to this amazing list of roller coasters, please do me a favor and hit that like button. New to my channel, no worries, just subscribe so we can be friends. On with the show. Slinky Dog Dash, located at Disney's Hollywood Studios. This family roller coaster is one of the most popular attractions at Hollywood Studios, so you might be wondering why this coaster would make my list. Well, just one word: boring, with a capital B. Sure, the general public will eat this thing up. I mean, it's Disney with one of its most popular IPs, Toy Story. Disney just announced a couple weeks ago Toy Story 5, so yeah, any roller coaster based around this franchise is going to be popular. When we start to dig a little deeper, I guess in this case start to ask other roller coaster enthusiasts, the overall opinion of this roller coaster, it gets kind of muddy. On one hand, we have those who are fans of Slinky Dog Dash. I think the biggest appeal is the brand. Second would be the family nature of this roller coaster. Kids 3 years and up will have a blast riding this roller coaster. It's non-threatening, entertaining, and Mock Rides did their very darndest to remove any bite from those launches. Now, to the flip side, those who don't like this attraction, it's pretty simple. I already said it, and it's just boring. Almost the same reason it's a great family coaster is why some will also dislike it. Not to say that family roller coasters are repulsive, because, well, that's not true. There are ways of making these a fun, all-around enjoyable ride that will keep everyone happy. If this roller coaster was just a touch more intense or a little bit more thrilling, it wouldn't scare away its base audience. Would it really hurt Disney to include airtime during those airtime hills? I'll just leave it at that. Kraken, located at SeaWorld Orlando. Because it's in Florida, Kraken became wrongly known as the first ever floorless roller coaster. That honor actually belongs to Medusa at Six Flags Great Adventure, but since Orlando parks are quite popular, for many people Kraken was their first time interacting with a roller coaster of this style. For those who are getting their feet wet in the whole coaster enthusiast community, I would see Kraken ranked higher up on their list. This isn't a slam, I respect everyone's coaster rankings because we all have our own preferences. I'm simply pointing out that Florida parks are popular, thus Kraken will be ridden by more enthusiasts than, say, Hydra the Revenge at Dorney Park. So, for those who love this roller coaster, we'll talk great things on pacing, layout, and location. Kraken is placed along a body of water, and it really adds to the whole coaster aesthetic. The pacing is also quite good. Besides that mid-course brake run, Kraken keeps throwing elements right after another. The finale is my personal favorite part of the ride. The coaster features a tunnel that leads right into a fast-paced, snappy corkscrew. For its time, Kraken has a solid layout. Now, these elements and in order they are executed is pretty common for looping roller coasters by B&M, which should say something about its layout. Finally, Kraken is a pretty intense ride. I've known to gray out at certain parts of the ride. The second half has that snappy corkscrew, the Cobra roll is pretty aggressive, most of the inversions are pretty forceful. Those who dislike this roller coaster, it kind of boils down to two things. First is the roughness. Kraken is now over 20 years old and it's starting to show its age. Depending on where you are seated, the ride can develop a rattle that can give you a headache. Second would be the layout. I know this was listed in the love it side, but yeah, if you've ridden other B&M loopers and Kraken wasn't your first, then you might find it a bit repetitive and uninspiring. Cheetah Hunt, located at Busch Gardens, Tampa. With a roller coaster that features 3 launches, over 4,000 feet of track, 1 inversion, and plenty of interactions, you might be wondering why this coaster would be disliked. Well, first let's talk about the good stuff. Those who love Cheetah Hunt will sing praises of the aspects I just mentioned: 3 launches, 1 inversion, a really long ride time. Also, it's built by Intimate Amusement Rides, the greatest manufacturer of all time. Starting out with the interactions and theming, Cheetah Hunt looks like a roller coaster that belongs at Busch Gardens, Tampa. It takes you on an epic adventure throughout the park, coming close with the safari and other attractions along the way. The launches, though nothing super intense, still packs a punch, and I love all 3 launches. Cheetah Hunt is a personal favorite of mine, and it managed to make its way into my top 10 favorite launching roller coasters. You can check out that video by clicking on the link in the video description, but of course, after finishing this video. Anyways, sure, I was sort of joking when I said that the manufacturer being Intamin was a plus, because I'm a fanboy of theirs, and so are many other coaster enthusiasts, but yeah, their projects come with a certain level of enthusiasm. When a new roller coaster by Intamin is getting built, people pay attention. So what about the people that dislike this roller coaster? Honestly, they're just wrong. Just kidding, but I think the main reason is the ride isn't Maverick. I know many were expecting crazy snappy maneuvers like Maverick, strong G-forces, but that's not Cheetah Hunt's game. Also, as sort of a throwdown, some will call Cheetah Hunt a family roller coaster, which is just crazy. Yes, it's not super intense, but it's not supposed to be that. This is a crowd pleaser, and it accomplishes that goal. Another reason for the hate might be the restraints. These over-the-shoulder straps aren't the most comfortable, and they do not leave much room for larger and/or taller guests. Bottom line, if you're going in expecting one thing and you get something else, I could see why you would leave disappointed. Let's stick around at the same park and talk about my next pick. That would be Kumba, located at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Kumba is a massive looping roller coaster by B&M. For its time, it was a record-breaking attraction. Kumba featured a massive vertical loop, along with 7 other inversions, including an interlocking corkscrew, the first of its kind. These interlocking corkscrews are this ride's signature element, and if you were alive back in the mid-90s, chances are you saw a photo of this iconic element. For those who love Kumba, riders will sing praise of this roller coaster's strong G-forces, excellent pacing, and overall good theming. Back in the early 90s, B&M wasn't afraid to push the boundaries when it came to G-forces. Their elements were faster, snappier, and just overall more aggressive. Kumba is from that era, which is why it is one of their more intense looping roller coasters. I've known to gray out during a few elements on this ride, so don't be surprised if the same happens to you. Along with that intensity comes excellent pacing. Kumba flies through its elements, barely allowing you any breathing time. The coaster does lose a little momentum after the interlocking corkscrew, but overall, it's a fast-paced ride. Now to the negative. Basically, it's one thing, and that's the roughness. Kumba is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, meaning this ride is pretty old for a steel roller coaster. There were rumors last year saying 2022 was going to be its last year of operation, but Busch Gardens promptly squashed those rumors and doubled down on their statement by giving this coaster a much-needed paint job. So yeah, Kumba is pretty rough, which is why this coaster is usually a one and done for me. I would also argue that Kumba is starting to lose popularity with the general public. Even on some of the busy days, Kumba will have a rather short wait time. Granted, this coaster has great capacity, but still the popularity isn't there. Also, just like Kraken, Kumba suffers with the same problem of similarity. The layout featured on Kumba has been copied many times over, and it's starting to get a little stale. Alright, the final coaster on my list is Ride Rockit, located at Universal Studios, Florida. Out of all the roller coasters on my list today, this one has to be the most polarizing. I think you're either in the love it or straight up hate it group. If you've been following my channel for at least a year, you might already know that I'm not a fan of Ride Rockit. I would argue that this coaster has a bad layout, too many block breaks, poor pacing, an uninspiring selection of music, and it just feels janky. So, for those reasons why people love this roller coaster would be the music. Personally, I think the music selection is outdated, but to others, this is great material. Regardless of your opinion on the music selection, having audio blaring in your ears during the whole ride does add a new layer of dimension to your ride experience. Next is the quirky layout. Ride Rockit starts off with a vertical lift, which isn't too common, though Gerstlauer is making this into a more traditional affair. The non-inverting loop is also another unique element, especially at the time of this ride's debut. Finally, some will say that Ride Rockit has a good handful of exciting airtime moments. There are a couple great spots, but I would say any of the airtime experienced on Ride Rockit is quickly overshadowed by Velocicoaster located in the adjacent park. Now, I already touched on the many reasons why I think Ride Rockit is terrible, but the main aspect is how rough this roller coaster can get. Being at Universal Studios, I would expect a higher quality attraction, and this thing doesn't feel that way. The trains rattle and shimmy their way through the whole layout, giving me an instant headache. If you're able to look past this one flaw, then maybe you'll enjoy Ride Rockit. If not, I guess we understand why it's on my list. That's gonna wrap up my list of the most divisive roller coasters in Florida. Let me know your picks down in the comments below. Until next time, this is Extreme Thrills.